So, Mark, what the is on your mind today? I am so glad you asked because I have a bunch of things I'm thinking about and some of them I want to share. One of the things is about how abusers or abusive systems use people's natural sensitivity and inclination for self-exploration, I can't even say it properly, to sort of undermine themselves. They sort of install this program of looking for faults. So a couple of days ago, actually a couple of weeks ago, I did a podcast with Dr. Karen Mitchell. She's a researcher and she talks about the predatory personality type. Something happened in that podcast that kind of blew my mind because I started talking about the spectrum of narcissism and she corrected me and said, no, hold on. What spectrum of narcissism? What are you talking about? And her opinion is that like you either are or you're not. And I know a lot of clinicians and psychologists probably disagree with her. But a lot of what she said was making sense because this idea that like, well, everybody's narcissistic, everybody has narcissism. I've always had a problem with it because you could argue that when we're growing up, we feel insecurity, we feel this, we feel that, and we sort of create, especially when we're younger, we sort of create this false sense of self, this sort of false bravado, pretending that we're not feeling something, pretending that we're stronger than we are. And it makes perfect sense as a developmental stage. And I think, honestly, I don't know if we grow out of it completely. I think most of us have some sort of veneer we're putting on, some kind of act we're putting on to some degree. But that seems pretty natural. And to call that narcissism seems a bit extreme. Now, the point some people make is, well, that is what narcissism is. Narcissism is a building of a false self. And I definitely agree with that. But to me, there's a difference between, somebody who might have those tendencies and, maybe you can call them narcissistic. I'm a little wary of doing that. To people who've built such a false self that they have a grand delusion that they are superior to everybody else and that nobody else matters and they can do to other people like anything they want. They can treat people like a toaster. Now we're getting into the realms of like being completely abusive to other people. So in some ways, the discussion with her was really interesting because it got me rethinking some things. In fact, she even said at one point that, she had questions about, I had questions about the person who came up with the idea of the spectrum. And from what I'm understanding, the suggestion might have been that even the person that coined the term, the spectrum of narcissism, may not be that savory themselves. And it got me thinking about people that talk about narcissism online, that like say they call themselves narcissists. They like to tell people that, well, everybody's narcissistic. You all have narcissism. And in some ways, it's a way to shield or mask their own. Like if everybody's narcissistic, then what I'm doing doesn't really matter. Hey, quick interlude. If you're liking these conversations and want to help me keep expressing what is on my mind, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and maybe even follow the podcast wherever you listen. And if you want to go a step further in supporting the show and getting access to some behind the scenes rants, you can join me over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Mark Vicente. It really does make a difference. All right, back to the episode. So I have trouble with this everybody's a narcissist thing, but it got me thinking about how if I said to somebody who's super sensitive and super introspective, like everybody has narcissism. It's on a spectrum. You have narcissism. What that person's going to start doing is that's the last thing they want to be. They want to be sensitive. They want to be caring for others. They're going to start digging into themselves to figure out where are they narcissistic. And they're going to go down this rabbit hole of trying to find all the moments that they're prideful, that they're this, that they're that. And the thing is, what is it to assert yourself? Like, what is it to assert a boundary? What is it to own your power, to take your power back? Is that narcissistic? And the answer to me is a resoundingly fucking no. And the problem is those things get seen then as narcissistic within that framing. Like, just because you're owning your value, does that make you arrogant? Does that make you narcissistic? Well, according to some people, it does. You're on the spectrum of narcissism. So to me, it's a whole bunch of bullshit. And the conversation with Dr. Karen Mitchell really got me rethinking this idea of the spectrum. Her point being, as I said, there are predators and then there's not predators. Can somebody have aspects of narcissism and not be predatory? I'll leave it to maybe the academics, but I think so. I have a lot of friends who I find very narcissistic, but they don't seem to have MPD, and they're not trying to destroy me, and they're not trying to belittle me, and they're not trying to control me. Because one of the things I see with what I think is NPD is I see this immense need for control. They're trying to control the world so that they feel okay, so that their delusion of omnipotence remains intact. And they're willing to do anything they want and can, including hurt you, to maintain that delusion. That to me is pretty bad, and not everybody is like that. Just because somebody says, oh, you're on the spectrum of narcissism like everybody else on the planet. No, not everybody's like that. That's a whole different thing. So it got me thinking about people that are narcissistic, that are psychopathic, or systems that are built by people like that. In some ways, perhaps want people to do all the self-examination. Because you see, if you take a good person, somebody who's compassionate, somebody who's empathetic, and you tell them that they have this fault, they're on the spectrum, they're really digging in, like I said before. And they are going to, in some ways, disable their own ego structures, disable their own sense of power and authority in favor of being a good, sensitive person and digging into all their faults. And then the thing is, the narcissist or the psychopath is literally laughing all the way to what I call the control bank or the power bank. They get to maintain their power. They get to maintain their control because the sensitive person has literally disabled themselves with self-examination. And then it got me thinking about in NXIVM, we would have these executive board meetings. We'd have these green meetings. The greens were the sort of upper ranks, where we discuss, the growth of different people, the proctors and the coaches and this kind of thing. And I remember at the end of some of these meetings or during some of these meetings, I would sometimes say, like, guys, we're not getting anywhere. Like, we're not doing anything. We're just talking. Like, nothing is happening. We have no clear, next steps of action. And what they would always say to me is like, you're so obsessed with actions. And I'm like, yeah, because that's how shit moves forward. You take action. And then they would say things to me like, well, I think the problem is you lack interdependence. See, in NXIVM, the word that was always used was interdependence. If you remember, those of you that have seen the show, the Vow, there was a star, and the symbol was the star, and that every point connected to every other point. That was the symbol of NXIVM and of ESP, and that was a symbol of interdependence. Everything was connected, Raniere would say. So I was told time and time again, it's because you're not a team player. They never used the word team player as much. They used the word, you're not interdependent. I remember an argument I had with Claire Bronfman, like my first year there, because she was trying to get me to do certain things her way. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it that way. I've been making films for a long time. I think this is the way we're going to do it. And she said to me, the problem with you, you're not interdependent. And in that moment, I realized what she meant by interdependent was, you're not under my control, and it's driving me fucking crazy. So there was this word used all the time, that I lacked interdependence. They always told me I was prideful, that I lacked humanity. Being a humanitarian was about taking in all perspectives. And I said, okay, great. So we can spend all our time in these meetings trying to be humanitarian, but we're not moving anything forward. It was an enormous frustration. And at a certain point, I think towards the end, as I was about to leave, I finally began to realize that the entire system was designed not to move forward. So long story, I think I spoke about it in another podcast. But it wasn't designed to move forward. It was designed to keep everybody hampered. It was designed to sort of pull our legs out from underneath us so nobody felt empowered. All we were told to do constantly was to introspect. And then, funnily enough, when we failed on the actions we were supposed to take, we were punished for it. And then I would say things like, you understand I'm doing 7 jobs. Well, you need to, you need to do it. I'm like, but how do you do 7 jobs? And they would say things, and Rainier would say things like, you need to give 100 and whatever percent to everything you're doing. I'm saying, okay, but what if you're trying to give 100 and something percent to 7 different jobs? Like, how does that work? So it was chaotic. But I realized in the end, the entire system was set up to disable everybody. And the psychopath at the top was constantly telling everybody to look inside, look inside, look inside, look at your lack of interdependence. You're not willing to see how you connect to the entire world. We used to have to write up these if you breached, your ethics, so they would say, you'd have to write up this breach report about how you failed yourself, how you failed your coworkers, how you failed this, how you failed the company, how you failed Nancy Salzman, the prefect, how you failed Vanguard, like how you failed the world, how you failed generations to come. And the thing is, sensitive people, they're like, fuck, I gotta fix this. So there's this weaponizing people's desire for goodness that I see going on. So I urge everybody to be super careful when you have people or systems trying to get you to look at all your faults all the time. I would be very suspicious, because I'm pretty sure they're not looking at theirs. I'm pretty damn sure. But we need to look at this impulse that we have, especially people who are sensitive, like to constantly go in and want to be better, and sort of start to sort of almost self-flagellate and punish themselves, like, I'm a piece of shit and I got to do this and I got to do that. Somebody else is in control, and you're literally just giving your power away. And I should know, because I did that for a long time. I think there's nothing wrong with asserting one's normal, healthy ego boundaries. And anybody who tells you, well, that's narcissism, tell them to go get fucked. On behalf of me, from me, fuck off. The other thing I was thinking about was the YouTube algorithm. Those of you who listened to my last podcast, I talked about a particular episode I did that was being radically suppressed by YouTube, I believe shadowbanned. And as a test, I went and looked up the person's name and looked for that episode. And I got to tell you, I had to scroll for a long, long, long time before that episode came up. And those of you who know what I'm talking about, you know who I'm talking about. Those of you who don't, I'm not going to say her name. It's a black woman with a bald head and an English accent. And I've said this before, but I find America right now so obsessed with diversity. So obsessed with, diversity quotas. And so I find it very interesting that while there's this desire for diversity in appearance, there is no fucking desire for diversity in thought. I think one of the problems with this guest of mine is that she has too much diversity in thought, and the algorithm does not like that. So I've said it before, if diversity is our strength, motherfuckers, it needs to be in thought as well. And I do not understand the impulse right now from the good people to suppress ideas that fall outside of the boundaries of their own agenda. You do understand that is religion. That is fucking culty. Stop fucking doing it. Wake the fuck up. Diversity is more than just skin color. It's a lot more than just that. Please. But anyway, I was thinking about how YouTube had shadow banned this episode. And they do that. There's a lot of people that I've watched on YouTube who talk about, like, the minute you mention this word, plummets. The minute you mention that word, it plummets. And then it's like there's this fucking virus that latches onto your code, in YouTube and just keeps on pushing you down. And it's almost like, I think to myself, like, what do we got to do? Do we got to, like, get on YouTube and do a grand confession and sort of talk about the great leader, the great ideas, the things we support, sort of, bow down, kiss their feet, sort of like, communist China? Is that where we're at now? is that we have to do some kind of like a grand thing promoting all the things that the algorithm is promoting. And understand the algorithm is built by people. And if you go further back, I do believe that the intelligence communities are directing a lot of the messaging right now that is guiding YouTube. So there's a suppression of YouTube going on, a suppression of people on YouTube going on. And then I look at the stuff that's not suppressed, and I'm fascinated. Anything that promotes the agenda, like if you hate the right person, you're promoted. If you do like silly shit, you're promoted. It's almost like they want garbage in your heads. So I kept on thinking about, what are they raising up? You know, if they're suppressing certain things, what are they promoting? What are they raising up? What are they evangelizing? And it seems that there's a certain psychology in it I'm beginning to see. It rewards hysteria. It rewards insane thumbnails. It rewards insanely hysterical titles in videos. And I was trying to think what it reminds me of. And it kind of reminds me of gossiping, histrionic schoolgirl psychology. You know, when you were at school, there was maybe that group of little friends, you know, sometimes it was boys as well. Most of the time, in my experience, it was girls who would just gossip and like have freakouts about everything. It's always something to freak out about. And of course, they got a lot of attention, you know, and they commanded a lot of, you know, social power. And I'm beginning to see with things like YouTube, that's what they're rewarding. It's like they're training people to become histrionic fucking idiots. And I was thinking to myself, okay, so in order to do well on YouTube, you need to stop talking about certain things, promote certain things of the correct agenda, and you have to be inflammatory. Not inflammatory about the wrong agenda, inflammatory within the box of the agenda. So you have to use keywords that are like, you know, 5 ways to know this and 10 ways to do this and the end is coming and like whatever the bullshit is. That's what's promoted. So it's literally pushing a psychological framework that is not authentic, that is disconnected from actual, true, authentic emotions, that is fear-mongering, that promotes hysteria. And it's got me really concerned because let's say I want to grow a lot more on YouTube. I haven't been very aggressive on YouTube at all, but let's say I want to grow a lot more. Do I stop being authentic? I mean, I think I'm authentic. I mean, people can tell me I'm not authentic. I think I'm pretty real. Do I stop doing that? Do I figure out what the gods want? And I say that on purpose. Do I figure out what the gods want? And do I give it to the gods? Do I sacrifice to the gods so that my voice gets out more? Because they control how much my voice, my ideas, my guests' ideas are heard. Do I sacrifice myself to be heard more? And what does that do to the world? Like if the algorithm is rewarding those things, if the algorithm is rewarding obedience, now we become more obedient. Now we look for the clues. It's sort of like dealing with an abusive parent when you're growing up. You need to learn the rules very quickly so that you don't get punished. And you learn that as a kid. And I'm seeing that a lot of adults in the world are doing the same thing. And I'm wondering if there's this weird fucked up dynamic between the users of YouTube, the creators in YouTube, and the digital gods, where we're watching very carefully to see what is Big Mommy and Daddy approve of, and what they don't approve of. We have to be careful, because if we push too far, we'll be silenced completely. And that's the rub, you see. I think about, like, I want to be outspoken and I want to say all these things, but like I recognize also if I push too far, if I say the wrong thing, if I criticize the wrong corporation or the wrong government or the wrong leader, do I get silenced completely? And by silence, I mean, do I get deplatformed? Many people have been deplatformed over the last few years. Valuable voices, saying incredible things that have turned out to be accurate and true. And I know some of you say sometimes, well, Mark, tell us specifically. No, you go find it. Go find it yourself. But stop going to CNN and to Fox and to all those corporate-controlled media outlets to figure out what is Mark talking about, what has been silenced. Don't even go to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is not going to tell you accurately what has been silenced. It is an extension of intelligence. It tells you what it wants you to know. And you have to spend a lot of time trying to trick ChatGPT into telling you the truth about very controversial subjects. So this is a very deep struggle for me, because this thing I'm talking about, the YouTube thing, because, I sit here and I think to myself, and I want to kind of put this out to you, my audience, like, what do you think I should do? Do you think I should just stick to my guns and not say the things I want to say and work within the boundaries of what the digital gods are allowing me to say without silencing me or my guests? And if I do that, what about diversity of thought? What about diversity? Like, everything becomes homogenous. So that's one struggle. And the other struggle is this histrionic thing. Do I go with the histrionic vibe? Do I act like a gossipy, histrionic, hysterical schoolgirl and write titles that are like crazy and stupid thumbnails because the algorithm rewards it and people like it, because people are being trained now? People want shocking. That's the problem. When you've actually been through shit, you don't like shocking as much anymore. I'm wondering sometimes, is it the people that haven't been through real shit in their life that have like little going on that just need the shocking to feel something? I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good that we're being trained that only the shocking things are important, because I think we're missing a lot of life. And so I guess my question, that was the first question, but the second question is, do I just stick to being me, which sometimes is understated titles, understated thumbnails, or do I go the route of hysteria? And I know some creators have been talking about this. Some creators say, well, the thing is, I want my message to be heard, and I know it's not great, but let me do hysteria, because at least then they're going to click on my video. And I struggle with that, because the hysteria isn't true to who I am. So now what I'm doing is, if I do the hysteria, I'm creating a false self that I hope you'll click on, because I believe there's deep shit inside, but your way in is a false self. And now I'm trying to trick you and entrap you into listening to the videos because I think I have interesting ideas, or my guests have interesting ideas. So do I do that? And some people say, well, that's advertising. That's what you do, make things look sexy on the outside. But then I go, okay, but then you're not delivering that. You're not delivering that thing on the outside. You're delivering something far deeper. And another person said to me the other day, yeah, but you kind of have to trick people into depth, because people are shallow. And I'm like saying, yeah, but now, is that what I want to think of people? That they're all shallow and I have to play them? I don't know. These are things that I'm considering as we move forward, in this, we're 2025 right now when I'm recording this. But like the next 5 years, we're being molded by algorithms that are generated by people. And if you go further and further back, you end up at DARPA and intelligence and DOD and a whole bunch of things. Our society is being molded and our consciousness is being molded. Is it good to play the game? Is it good to play the game? And how do you know if you play the game, you won't get lost? Because people say, oh no, I'm too strong to get lost. Really? Really? Because like the advertising machine, the glitz and the glamour is so powerful. You have to understand, and I've said this before, if you think back at, Madison Avenue advertising, they understood things about psychology. Hollywood is full of incredible artists and technicians. We know how to make people feel certain things. We know how to trick people. We know how to use music and color and lights and, dialogue and a pretty face and a handsome body and a whatever to get you to feel things. That can go horribly, horribly wrong. So, yeah, that's some of the shit that's been on my mind. I would love to hear your opinion on these ramblings. And I don't have a lot of clarity. I mean, mostly I'm feeling like authenticity is my jam. But at the same time, I think I have valuable things to say and I want people to hear them. So what do you guys think? I'd love to know. And as always, stay curious.